Well, I think racism is quite a multifaceted concept. So, let's say the most obvious kind of level of racism is interpersonal racism, meaning it's something that every one of us can identify. So, kind of the person who hates another person because of their skin color or race, ethnicity, or such. So that's kind of the most distinct, and everyone knows what racism is through that. But then there are more, let's say, intricate levels of racism. So there's structural racism, institutional racism, and then internalized racism. And I think those are the levels of racism that we need to kind of combat with anti-racism. Well, it's not like directly connected to anti-racism, but I'm looking at equity within Finnish cultural policy and funding. And through that, I'm looking at how diverse groups, minority groups are treated within our cultural policies and funding. So is that equitable? How are these minorities treated or considered within the policies? So I guess it's important from an anti-racism point of view also to kind of not only to be considered, but also to be recognized within our policies and within the funding systems. Well, I can say as an overview that equity and kind of considering diverse groups and minorities, there is a will to do that within our government. And I think it has a lot to do with current research and societal movements putting pressure on our government and kind of our policy makers, decision makers on these topics, that they are important. So there is definitely a will there. But I guess within my research, the overview kind of states that the implementation and moreover the monitoring of the outcomes of this kind of equity instruments or initiatives then falls short. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's no kind of comprehensive set of equity instruments that would be kind of distilled within our cultural policy. So there are kind of programs directed at certain minority groups or certain forms of art. So that's important, but that's not structural. So we need a structural change within our policy system towards equity. Well, structural changes overall are really important. Not to say that it isn't important for everyone to individually kind of unlearn this internalized racism or get familiar with structural racism and institutional racism. I think it's really important to learn about those things, especially as a white person, when you never have to kind of you never have to kind of work through those things. So it's really important to unlearn, but also learn about racism and what it means to different minorities. So that's kind of step one, but then it needs to be taken further into the structures and into the institutions. And it means work from everyone. But one important aspect, in my opinion, is representation. So if there is not diverse representation within our institutions, within our policymakers, our decision makers, the decisions will never kind of be diverse or reflect the diversity of our society. So I think it needs to be incorporated in all levels.